Thank you so much for joining us on the Dwelling Show. I'm your host, Ola Dantes. I've got the amazing Nicole Hazley with us today. Hey, Nicole, how are you doing?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
Doing great. You're frequent forum poster, just like me on Bigger Pockets, and I've been looking at your posts. I love your posts. I'm like, hey, I mean, you really give out golden nuggets. Can you come on the Dwelling Show? And you said yes. So I'm so glad to have you on the show.
I try to make sure that I spend at least 15 minutes a day interacting with others on Bigger Pockets. There's no limit to what you can discover just by putting yourself out there.
Yeah, and yeah, this is a perfect example. So let's jump right into it. I'm sure you can do a way better job than I can. So can you kind of just tell the dual listeners a little bit more about kind of who you are and your journey up until this point and kind of what you've been doing lately?
Okay, so I am Nicole. My journey started right out of college. I got my first job in Cleveland, Ohio, and I was going to Kent State, so it's about 45 minutes apart. A little less. But I get my first job, in Cleveland, and I don't really know anyone in Cleveland. I don't know the area that well. So for a year, I'm commuting, and my plan is get an apartment, get a roommate. I have student loans and an accounting degree. And even with an accounting degree, my student loans are so crazy that to live on my own, I'd be living off of ramen. And I didn't want to do that. So I'm looking at apartments and I'm like on Craigslist, searching for roommates and stuff. And my dad is the one who has the idea. He says, go get a house. And instead of paying a landlord, let them pay you and build some equity. And I'm like, okay. I know nothing about real estate, nothing about buying houses. Although I am, working for a REIT. I work for a company that owns commercial real estate. And I was doing accounting work for them at the time, but still on the residential side, knew nothing. But I go find a lender and I go find an agent or J loan, which lets me put 3.5% down. And in Cleveland, you with the FHA loan, you can get into a house for under $5,000. So I have enough savings to do this, and I go out and I find a house and I move into it. I find a single family home and I start renting the spare bedrooms out. So fortunately, the Cleveland Clinic was nearby. And so I got some of my renters from there, but I also had a social worker live with me. I had a teacher live with me. But I had probably someone moving in or out every year. And I did that for 3 years. And, my idea was I'll do this and I'll pay down the student loans. But when you first get that first rent check, you're kind of like, well, I just got someone to make my house payment for me. Can I find someone to make my car payment for me?
I know.
Can I find someone to send me on a cruise once every couple of years? So instead of taking that money and shoveling it into the loan out of that house in Cleveland.
Wow. So you got, sorry, go on.
No, so we've got 3 properties now, and we've got our eyes on a 4th. And when I say we, I mean me and my father. So I own the properties and I do the financial analyses and things like that. My dad is the boots on the ground. My properties, I still have that house in Cleveland. Other than that, my houses are all in Youngstown, Ohio. They're about an hour away from me. I'm in Akron, Ohio now. Self-managing the Cleveland property, but my dad takes care of the Youngstown properties. So we've formed a really nice little partnership there.
Yeah, I mean, a lot going on actually. First and foremost, do you think your job at the REIT, right, like kind of doing accounting for commercial properties, do you think that kind of helped, or does that helps, like making things a little bit easier?
Absolutely. I mean, first off, just the more you can surround yourself with real estate, the better. And it helped in a variety of ways. I learned how to read leases. I learned, about property management. I learned about leasing, about negotiations. I'm surrounded by people who also, have these skills as well. And, doing accounting, doing a desk job, of course, I can blast through Bigger Pockets podcasts. And I've started branching out there too. I'm listening to Afford Anything now by Paula Pant. I'm listening to Choose FI, and of course I'm listening to the Dwellin Show.
Oh, thank you. I like that. I like the plug. So another thing, right, is somebody
Oh,
listening. Yeah, somebody listening might just think, well, hold on a second. I have $5,000. I can go buy a property, even a single family, and do something that Nicole is doing. But the mind might be saying, yeah, but I have a day job, right? I have a 9 to 5. I don't know if I can do what Nicole is doing, managing all these properties. What would you say to that person?
So, first off, it would depend on the intensity of your day job. My employer doesn't mind if I need to go make a 15-minute phone call. And, I usually don't have to get involved in the management of the properties unless something really big is going on. Like we had a property with a cockroach problem for, a little bit. The house next door was vacant and they invaded our property and it was a big nightmare. But I had to make 2 or 3 phone calls with my property manager to find out what was going on with my property, or my dad, and coordinate, find out what's going on. Other than that, these properties take up 10 hours a month of my time. They take up so little time. Now, when I was living in the property, again, it's just a single family home. So everything I had to do for that property, I would have had to do if I was living in that house by myself, where the tenants didn't really take up extra time. I don't know if I got lucky, or I shouldn't say I got lucky. I screened very well. And my tenants never caused problems. They didn't break things. I never had a late rent check. They didn't bring scary people home. All the things that people told me they were going to do didn't happen. And actually, it made things easier because sometimes there'd be a repair and I could have one of the roommates, one of the tenants, open the door and let the guy in and take care of it for me, so I didn't have to take time off work and come home to take care of an issue. So time-wise, it doesn't take up a ton of time. It really doesn't.
So the other thing that is actually really fascinating is when we talk about like house hacking, it's typically like a duplex, a triplex, or a fourplex, right?
Yeah.
So, but you've done, I had a guest, I can't remember his name now. I had a guest, he did the same thing with a 5-bedroom where he actually bought a 5-bedroom. I don't know how much he bought it for. Let's say like 400,000. And he just literally just rent out all the rooms in there. And all the guys, like his friends, were like paying the mortgage. I need to live rent free. So it's kind of similar to what you're doing, right? So based on your experience and everything you've said about
Absolutely.
living with people in the same space, as opposed to like having different units, would you advise somebody to use this approach to get into real estate, meaning going to buy, a single family?
Absolutely. First off, if the numbers work, whether it's 1 unit or 12. So that I wanted to get into real estate. I didn't know that I was going to find this passion. And if I could go back and do it again, yeah, I might go look for a duplex. But your product is limited if you're looking at multifamily. There's a lot fewer multifamily out there than there are single family homes. So, I didn't know what was coming. I was fresh out of college. I had just gotten my first job. For all I knew, I could meet someone tomorrow and want to move out of this thing. And so my focus was just on location, making sure it was in a close proximity to work, making sure it was in like a safe area because, we got girls living alone kind of thing. But duplex wasn't even on my radar. I wish it had been, but it wasn't. And I had already been living in college with roommates. So this was nothing new. This was nothing different. If anything, it was just more room because I think I was coming out of like a 700 square foot apartment and going into a 1,400 square foot house. So I thought that I was like rolling in space. I was like, what will I do? If I had empty bedrooms, I wouldn't even know what to do with them, of what I had already been doing, but with more space. So it's certainly easier for someone who's younger to do it. And it's, younger and definitely if you're single, of course, that makes it even easier. That being said, there's no reason anyone of any situation really can't do it. It's a little, it's a little, I guess, harder in some ways because you're sharing a bathroom, you're sharing a kitchen, you're sharing everything. And if you're not used to doing that already, yeah, there's going to be a little bit of an adjustment. But if you are, if you've been doing that since college, it didn't feel like anything different.
Right. Yeah. And I think you made a really good point that you were pretty good with like screening tenants, and that could be like a deal breaker, right? I mean, like you mentioned that, right? So what is your hack for like somebody trying to, if they want to do this and they've got the 3-bedroom, 2-bedroom house, whatever, and they want to screen, their tenants, make sure that the person isn't a psychopath, right? What are you doing in terms of your tenant screening process to make sure that you're
Yeah.
really, you're getting the right people?
So there's a couple things that I did. First I put together a good post, describing the house, good pictures, things like that. I did put female, which I was able to do without coming under any fair housing discrimination laws because of the fact that we were sharing a single family home. So I was able to kind of specify a little bit more what I was looking for. I used Craigslist. I used roomiematch.com, which is kind of like a match.com, but for roommates. Had you fill out this questionnaire, and then it would help, match you up with people who might work out. I'm trying to think of all the ways that I got tenants. And then from there, once I made contact with someone, you meet in a public place, you exchange social media account names. And once you meet someone in person, they have a job lined up, ready to go. From there, it's just a gut feeling. If your gut says this is going to work, then listen to it. If your gut says it's not going to work, or if you're not a good judge of character, that's another big thing. I had already in college, I had found random roommates on the internet. There was a summer that I was like kind of between leases, and I found someone on Craigslist that I went and moved in with for like 3 months in Kent. So I had kind of already had practice at this, and it had already gone well, and I didn't get stabbed. So I knew that this could work. I was not running credit and background checks at the time because, again, I'm dealing with girls who are just out of college. What are you going to run a credit check on? These are 22-year-old, 23-year-old people. I did not run a background check. I probably should have. I don't know if I advertised that I was going to, but another thing I did though was I made my leases month to month, which normally I would not advise doing. Obviously, if you've got a pure rental property, you don't want someone moving out in December. But I had to protect myself, my home, and the other girl living there because there were 3 of us. So if one girl's a psycho, I'm not just worried about myself, I'm worried about the other roommate. And I wanted to be able to get them out kind of quickly if something went south. Fortunately, never happened.
Wow, that's amazing.
But I mean, just by looking at Facebook, just by looking at Facebook though, you can usually tell if someone said, "Oh, I just graduated from OSU," you're going to be able to go on their Facebook and see some pictures of them in OSU gear at a game or something like that. So if someone's trying to pull something fishy, there's usually just it's going to show through one way or another, I think. But I would still tell someone, if you're going to do this, run the background checks at least, even if you're not going to do the credit check. If you're younger, starting out, and there's not a lot of credit to run the background check just to be safe.
Wow, that's amazing. So for that first one, you just have people living there without you now, and you're still kind of managing all that, managing the assets, well, with your dad, of course, right?
Yeah. Actually, we got once I moved out, I don't have to worry about it for another 18 months of it turning over. Now, we probably will eventually get rid of that one because it's kind of an outlier. And the other big mistake that I made, that I would love to warn people about, when like I said, when I was looking at this property, I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I had no idea that I was going to want more properties, that I was going to, want to turn this into my life. And I did not run the numbers as a pure rental. All I knew is that I knew my mortgage payment, and I had a basic idea of what I could get per bedroom. and knew that would cover the mortgage, and that's all I had. So as a pure rental, it's actually my worst performing property. It doesn't lose me money each month, but it doesn't make me a whole lot either. Once I set aside the reserves for vacancy and repair and capex, there's not a ton left over. I could not turn it over. So eventually we'll probably get rid of it. But run the numbers, both living in it and not living in it, before you buy something.
So I think that's probably a good segue for my next question. And you can use any one of your deals, or you can use like, just random numbers. So what would you consider, like if I'm out here, listening on the show and I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm in, I don't know, a different part of the country and I want to do the same thing Nicole is doing. Maybe you can tell us one of your deals using, numbers of, first, how did you find it? And then what were the numbers on the post, not living in the house, but just to, rent it out?
Okay. So I guess we'll stick with the Cleveland house. So I rent that property out for, I advertised it for, I think $1,500 a month. Then they've got some pets. So my rent ended up being $1,550. And then they signed a 2-year lease. So I take another $10 off a month for that. So it's $1,540 a month. And then I do 10% for vacancy, 10% for repairs, 5% for capital expenditures. If I had a property manager, there'd be another 10% thrown in there. The mortgage is $1,088 a month, $8 each month. So without paper and pen, I'm not good at math without paper and pen, despite being an accountant.
So I think you're cash flowing. You're cash flowing. So I think
I end up
about 100 or something.
A little less. It's like 67 or something like that. So it doesn't lose me money. And that's the most important thing. I'm still building that equity. And again, it is making money if you count that vacancy money, if you count that capex, that repair money. But again, you don't want to touch that. You really, really don't want to touch that. Now, if that egg, an nest egg gets to a certain point, I'd say if you've got $5 to $10 grand in a house, you've probably got enough to cover anything that's going to come up. And at that point, you might be able to back off a little bit on what you're saving. But you really, really, I got quoted. It needs some roof repairs, which we'll probably do next spring. And the price cash flowing even $100 a month. $4 grand is going to wipe you out for a couple of years. So you have to put those numbers in there. You have to have those backups for that roof repair, for that furnace, for that hot water tank. Those things are going to happen. Those things are going to come up. Even with a brand new turnkey property, at some point, it's going to come up. And it's funny because people love to use those as reasons not to get into real estate. Oh, well, your tenants, they're going to get in there, they're going to trash it. You're going to have a hot water tank go. They're not going to pay rent. And it's like, that's like saying, I'm not going to become a doctor because someone might get sick. And what if, but you don't hear anyone saying, don't become a doctor because someone might get sick and die. Of course it's going to happen. But you just have a buffer for that. You just prepare for that. So it's just not something I really lose sleep over.
Yeah, I totally agree. Same thing. Yeah, you're going, if you do enough deals, you're going to have issues. So, but for the issues, that's why you have the capex allocation. That's why you have the vacancy allocation, the repairs, the maintenance, and the property. That's why you do all that. That's the purpose. And that's why you listen to someone like Nicole who has done it. What are you doing right? So I can learn and I don't make mistakes. That's the whole point, right? I can talk to you and keep going, but we definitely.
Yeah,
we're like going into the quick rounds. Do you want to say something?
Well, not just yeah, I was gonna say, don't just when you're don't just listen to what they're doing right. Listen to what they did wrong, because you're gonna learn just as much from that. I would say in some ways it's more important to know what not to do, because there's a whole lot of what not to do and not a whole lot of what to do. So if you wipe out all the what not to do, you'll get to what you should do pretty quickly.
Totally agree. Totally agree. So we're definitely dwelling into the quick rounds. These are going to be quick questions, quick
Sure.
answer. You ready? All
Yeah.
right. First question. What makes you, Nicole, unique? What is that differentiating factor that separates you from the next guy or the next girl?
In terms of being a real estate agent or just in the world?
Either, or you can do both. I'll take it.
I'm a girl in real estate. That makes me unique. There's not a lot of us. And also, I'm good at talking to people. And that's how we don't have fear when it comes to talking to new people. I don't have any fear in social situations. I don't have any anxiety, kind of type A. And that's a big boost.
Awesome. Second question. What was the last book that you read? And what was the one thing that you picked up from that book?
So I just read Scott Trench's Set for Life. And the thing that I picked up is he has a chapter about learning to control your income. And one thing he kind of gets into is if you, and I'll either keep to really get into real estate, I will have to embrace that fear of losing the cushion salary job with the benefits and the PTO and all that that I have behind me at this point.
Interesting. Final question. So you've got all your properties, managing with your dad. You got obviously you got your day job. What do you do for fun?
Oh God, I read about business. I'm such a business junkie. I mean, all day, every day. But I love puzzles, which makes me sound so cool. I've got my boyfriend that I live with. Anything with him, date nights, going hiking, or just watching TV. But I also spend a lot of time in Youngstown and in Columbus. Seeing my friends from high school and my friends from college and everything. I have a really great support group, and the more time I spend with that support group, the better.
Yeah, love that. Love that. Awesome. So if there's a dual listener listening and thinking, wow, I really like Nicole, maybe they're in Ohio somewhere or maybe anywhere in the country and they want to kind of reach out to you, get connected, where's the best place people can reach out, get to know you more?
I'm on Bigger Pockets. I am on LinkedIn. And I am starting my own real estate meetup in Youngstown. So if you are in the Youngstown area, we will be at the Magic Tree in Boardman the third Tuesday of every month. Like Bigger Pockets always says, if you can't find a meetup group, start one. So that's what we're doing.
Yeah, totally agree. That's going to be awesome. Yeah, I don't think I've actually been to Ohio yet. I haven't. Yeah, I have not been to that state. Yeah,
You're missing
interesting.
out.
Really? Okay.
I'm born and bred. I'm all about it, which is also rare to find. But it's a great state full of friendly Midwesterners, and I have no complaints.
Okay. Yeah, maybe one of these days. Well, Nicole, thank you so much.
You are, let me know.
Yeah, definitely. Of course, definitely. Well, I really appreciate you. I learned a ton myself. I really appreciate you coming on the show.
Anytime, Ola. Whenever you need a guest, I'm always happy to pop in.
Thank you so much.